Hi friends, welcome to the channel. Welcome to part 2 of KSET 2020 question paper analysis. So previously in the previous video we saw the first 20 questions. I'll put the link in for that video in the description box below this video. If you have not yet checked that, you can watch that. So let's continue that. So question number 21, if x and y are non-zero positive integers, the following pseudocode computes. So a pseudocode is being given here. If you see the pseudocode, whenever x and y, x is not equal to y, it checks whether x is greater than y. If it is true, it computes x minus y and stores it in x. Otherwise, it computes y minus x and stores it in y. And finally, it displays x. Okay, so it does not, so x will not contain the largest of x and y or smallest of x and y because it keeps on subtracting x minus y or y minus x. So this is the standard code, pseudocode to compute the GCD of two numbers. So GCD of two numbers x and y is nothing but the largest number that divides both x and y. So this would be, the right answer would be the GCD of x and y. That would be this code is used to compute the GCD of x and y. The next question is output of the C statement, printf %t printf Bangalore is. So this is an example of a nested printf statement. So in this case, what happens is that you have a nested printf statement. So the inner printf statement will print these characters. It will print Bangalore on the screen and it will return the length of the string printed to the outer printf statement. That's why you have %d here. So there are 9 characters here. So the length of the string here is 9. So 9 will be returned to the outer printf statement and it will display Bangalore 9 on the screen. So the answer for this would be option B. The next question is output of the below C program segment is. So you have a for loop here. So what happens is you have a for loop which starts from 1 and it runs until I is less than 5. That means it will run for 4 iterations. If I is less than 4, continue. So whenever I is less than 4, that particular iteration will be skipped. So the iterations 1, 2 and 3 will be skipped. That means the printf statement will not be executed when the value of I is equal to 1 or 2 or 3. When the value of I becomes 4, I less than 4, this condition becomes false and so that iteration will not be skipped and so it executes the next statement. So printf will get executed and when printf gets executed, it will print 4. Okay, so the answer to this will be option C, 4. The next question is what is the output of the following C program segment int main? Here you have a character array and putchar is being used here. So what happens is getchar and putchar are used to deal with only one character at a time. And when you say putchar of star names, names is a character array and star names will print the first character of the first row. The first character of the first row is C and so it will print C. The right answer for this would be option D, print C. The next question is if CP is a pointer to char type, size of CP in a 32-bit machine is. So here what happens is when you take the concept of a pointer is used to store the address of another variable. It can be any variable. It can be an integer or a floating point number or a character. So irrespective of whatever address it is storing, irrespective of whatever variable whose address it is storing, it is always going to store an integer value because it is going to store an address. So size of the pointer in a 32-bit machine will be 32 bits. In a 16-bit machine, it's going to be 16 bits and so on. So 32 bits is nothing but 32 divided by 8. It would be 4 bytes. The right answer would be option D here. The next question is output of the following C code segment. Here you have star AP, which is used to denote a pointer, star APP, which is used to denote a double pointer. Okay, star APP is called double pointer. So AP, you have a variable A whose value is 10 and you have a pointer AP which is going to store the address of A. You have the double pointer APP which is going to store the address of the pointer AP. So when you use star APP in the printf statement, what happens is that the value which is pointed to by the double pointer gets printed on the screen. Okay, so the value which is pointed to by the double pointer indirectly is 10. So 10 gets printed on the screen. The next question is, what is the output of the following C program segment? So here, what happens is that int ampersand p is equal to a. So when I say int ampersand p is equal to a, p is created as a reference to a. Okay, p is nothing but a reference to a. So when p is used as a reference to a, what happens is both p and a refer to a only. So when I say cout ampersand p, what happens is the value of a is 10. So both when I say cout ampersand p, the address of p gets printed. Address of p is nothing but the address of a will get printed. Okay, so answer for this would be option A. The next one is a function that does the same operation on different types of data is implemented using. So here you have the answer is option C, function template. Function template is nothing but function template reduces the size of the code, and depending on the data type which is actually used, the compiler internally generates the code. Okay, so that concept is called function template. So the answer for this would be function template. Function overloading is nothing but when you have functions with the same name but different number of arguments and different data types of arguments, it's called function overloading. But here in the concept of function template, you're going to have a reduced size of the code. You're going to have the same code, but depending on the data type which is actually being used, compiler will internally generate and add the code. So the answer for this would be option C, function template. The next question is, the output of the following Java program is, a Java program is being given here, and they have given the value of x would be 11 ampersand 9. So this ampersand is the bitwise AND operator, and this one is the bitwise XOR operator, and this one is bitwise OR operator. So you have to do 11 bitwise AND 9, and then XOR it with 3, and then you have to OR it bitwise, do a bitwise OR operation with 12. So what happens here is, so when you do bitwise AND with bitwise AND of 11 and 9 in AND operation, what happens is, if both the, so whenever you do, so in the case of bitwise AND operation, so 1 ANDed with 1 would be 1, 1 ANDed with 0 would be 0, 0 ANDed with 0 would be 0, 1 ANDed with 1 would be 1. In the case of exclusive OR operation, if if both the bits are opposite type, then it's going to be 1. Result is going to be 1. If they are of same type, result is going to be 0. So 1 with 1 would be 0. Otherwise, it is going to be 1. 0 with 0 would be 0. If it's of opposite type, then it's going to be 1. So the result is 1 0 1 0 here. And then you have y bitwise OR of 12. When you do bitwise OR of y with 12, what happens is, in the case of OR operation, so when you do 1 OR with 1, you'll get 1. 0 OR with 1, you'll get 1. Only if both the bits are 0, you'll be getting a 0. So whenever, even if at least one of the bit is 1, you'll be getting the value of value as result as 1. So the result would be decimal 14. That would be the answer to this question. The next would be, a thread can be initiated with. So the answer for this question would be start method. So whenever the thread is started with the start method, run method can be called implicitly, or it can also be called explicitly. Whenever the run method associated with the thread is called, the code associated with the thread gets executed. So the answer for this would be option B, start method. The next question is, hue of a color is related to its. So color has different attributes like hue, saturation, and brightness, and hue of a color is related to the wavelength of spectral colors. So the answer to this would be option D, wavelength. The next one is, in which stage of database design all the necessary fields and their types of a database are listed. So the right answer to this would be option A, data definition stage. So in the ER diagram stage, the relationship of the entity sets would be determined. The next would be database table by name loan records is given below. So you have a table called as loan records. What is the output of the following SQL query is being asked here. Select counts start from select borrower comma bank manager from loan records as yes. Okay, so you have to select borrower and bank manager. So you'll get yes is nothing but it will contain these two columns, borrower and bank manager with all its fields. And T would be select bank manager comma loan amount from loan records. So bank manager and loan amount would be selected, and that would be the columns in the newly created table T. So then you have to perform natural join of S and T. Okay, you need to perform natural join of S and T. So in the first, in S you have borrower and bank manager fields. In T you have bank manager and loan amount field. So what is a common column in both these tables? Bank manager is a common column. So you need to perform natural join operation. What is natural join? Natural join is a join operation which will create an implicit join class for you based on the common columns of both the tables. So the common column in both the table is the bank manager. So based on bank manager, an implicit join class will be created and a new table will be formed. And you have to apply the count function to this to that new table and find out the answer here. So what happens is this is the yes. So when you do select borrower comma bank manager from loan records, you'll get this one. And when you do select bank manager comma loan amount, you'll be getting this table. When you apply the natural join, what happens is I told you natural join, the join will be done based on the common column. The common column in both these tables is, in first table you have borrower and bank manager. In the second table you have bank manager and loan amount. So the common column is bank manager. Based on bank manager, a new table is going to be created. So first take the first row of the first table. You have Rasika and Praveen. So the common column is Praveen. So it looks for Praveen in the second table. In the second table you have Praveen 10,000. And in the second table, you have Praveen 10,000 and Praveen 7,000, right? So Rasika, Praveen will be joined with Praveen 10,000 and Praveen 7,000. So accordingly, you have Rasika, Praveen 10,000 and Rasika, Praveen 7,000, right? Then the next row of the first table is Karuna and Kushal. So the common column is Kushal. So it checks Kushal in the second table. So you have only once, Kushal appears only once in the second table. So Karuna, Kushal and 5,000 will be joined and created as the new row in the joined table, natural join table. So third one is Rajeshwari and Praveen. The common bank manager column contains a value Praveen. So Praveen is searched for in the second table. You have Praveen 10,000 and Praveen 7,000. So Rajeshwari Praveen will be joined with Praveen 10,000 and Praveen 7,000. So accordingly, you have Rajeshwari Praveen 10,000 and Rajeshwari Praveen 7,000. Okay, this is the resultant table which is created as a result of natural join operation of the tables S and T. So this is the table S and this is the table T. And this is the natural joined. This is the table which is created by the natural join operation. Okay, now you have to apply the count function. Count of star will select all the records, will count the number of records in the resultant table. Okay, the number of records is, or the number of rows is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the answer for this would be option C, which is 5. The next question is, a transaction that inserts a new tuple into a database is given. Whenever a transaction inserts a new tuple into a database, it will be given exclusive lock. The next question is reliability of a system with n redundant components, each having a reliability of R is. The answer to this would be 1 minus R to the power n. Okay. The next question is consider the schedule. You have been given a schedule with 3 transactions T1, T2 and T3. You have to check whether they are conflict serializable and view serializable or not. Okay, for conflict serializability, I've just written down these 3 transactions T1, T2 and T3 in the order of their timeline. The order of their timeline is like this. Okay, so first T1 performs a read operation on X, T2 perform, and then T2 performs read operation on Y, then T3 performs write operation on X, then T2 performs read operation on X, and so on. So to check for conflict serializability, I will check for conflicting operations, namely read, write, write, read, and write, write operations. Read and read is not a conflicting operation. So first I draw the precedence graph with the three nodes T1, T2 and T3 because I have three transactions. See here, when transaction T1 performs, I first check the first operation of transaction T1. It performs a read operation on data item X. Okay. So here later in the timeline, you have T3, which performs a write operation on the same data item X. So this is a conflicting operation. So T1 should happen executed, T1 should be executed before T3. So I have a line from T1 to T3 here, this line. Okay. Similarly, when T3 executes write operation on X, T2 performs a read operation on the same data item X. So T3 and T2 perform conflicting operations on the same data item. So I have a line from T3 to T2 here, right? So there is no other conflicting operations here in this schedule. And so this schedule is, when the precedence graph has a cycle, we can say that it's not a conflict serializable, but this precedence graph does not have a cycle. No cycle is formed. And so the schedule is conflict serializable as well as serializable. The next one is you have to check whether it is view serializable. This is the given schedule. So in this given schedule, if I am able to prove that it is view equivalent to at least one of its serial schedules, I can say that it is view serializable. Okay. Also, if it does not contain, so here, for it to check whether it is view serializable or not, I have to check three conditions, namely initial read, final write, and intermittent read operation. So first I'll just check with initial read operation. So let's say this is the given schedule. Yes, I say that it is equivalent to one of its serial schedules. Let's say the serial schedule order is T1 and then T2 and then T3. Okay, so that means if I say this given schedule is equivalent to this schedule, that means in this serial schedule order, T1 should finish all of its operations before T2 starts, right? So T1's operations are read operation on X and read operation on Y. Read operation on X and read operation on Y. Okay, so it will happen first and then T2's operation, namely read of Y and read of X will happen. And then T3's operation, namely write of X will happen. Okay, this is one of the serial schedules. If I say that this given schedule is view equivalent to this serial schedule T1, T2, T3, then that it means T1 should execute all of its operations before T2 starts. So in the given schedule, which is doing the initial read operation of the data item X, T1 is performing the initial read operation of the data item X. Okay, so T2 is performing the read operation of the data item Y. Okay, so but in the serial schedule, what happens? T1 has to get executed fully before T2 starts. That means T1 would be doing the initial read operation of both the data item X and Y. But in the given schedule, T1 performs the initial read operation of X and T2 performs the initial read operation of Y. Okay, so initial read operation should be done by the same transaction in both the given schedule as well as in the equivalent serial schedule, but that will not happen. So either T1 would be executed before T2 starts or T2 will be executed fully before T1 starts. So even if I change the order from T1, T2, T3 to T2, T1, T3 also, the same problem will arise. So this given schedule is not satisfying the initial read condition, and so this schedule is not view serializable. Okay. So the answer for this question would be it is conflict serializable, but it is not view serializable. The next question is, consider the following commands: create table department. You have a table called department in which you have the fields department number, which is int, and department name. And then you have another table called EMP, which has three fields: employee number, employee name, as well as the department number field, which is a foreign key, which references the department number field in the department table. Okay. Which of the following causes violation of referential integrity constraints? So here the update operation. So here the department number field references the department number field of the department table. So the referential integrity constraint will be violated when you do the update operation on the department table. So the answer to this would be option C. The next one is information in GIS is entered and stored as. GIS stands for Geographic Information System, and the answer would be option B, layers. And which of the following is heterogeneous distributed database? So there are two types of distributed databases: homogeneous distributed database and heterogeneous distributed database. Okay, in the case of homogeneous, in both the kinds of homogeneous and heterogeneous, the data will be distributed across all the nodes because it is distributed database. But in the case of heterogeneous distributed database, different DBMSs will be used at each location. But if it is homogeneous distributed database, same DBMS will be used at all those locations. So here the right answer would be option D. So here, as I told, you have two types of DBMS, centralized and distributed. A DBMS will be called as distributed DBMS only when the actual database and the DBMS software are distributed across many sites or many nodes. The next one is, which is true about the three-tier data warehouses? The answer would be option A. Once created, the data marts will keep on being updated from the data warehouse at periodic times. Okay. The next one is, web mining is not used in which of the following areas? Web mining is not used in online transaction processing. And next question is, which technology is used to store data in Hadoop? The technology which is used is HBase. HBase stands for Hadoop database, which is used on top of Hadoop distributed file system. The next question is, object definition language ODL supports dash operators. It supports both unary and binary operators. And storage mapping is done by dash. So the answer to this is compiler. So next one is, a loader is loader is basically a program that loads the program into memory and prepares it for execution. So answer is option B here. Next question is, compiler can check what types of errors? Compiler can check only syntax errors. It cannot detect logical errors or semantic errors. If there is any logical or dynamic semantic errors, it can be detected only during execution time. The last question is question number 50 in the KSET 2020 question paper. It was also asked in GATE 2006 ISRO exam as well as in UGC NET examination. The question is, CPU generates 32-bit virtual addresses. The page size is 4K bytes. So the processor has a TLB, translation look aside buffer, which can hold 128 page table entries and 4-way set associative. The translation look aside buffer is 4-way set associative, and they are asking the minimum size of the TLB tab. So translation look aside buffer is nothing but it's a small size. It's similar to a cache, and the most frequently accessed page table entries will be stored in the translation look aside buffer. Okay. CPU generates 32-bit virtual addresses. That means translation look aside buffer, it can also be represented as 32 bits. And they say the translation look aside buffer can store 128 page table entries. Okay. So they are asking the size of the cache tag. The TLB address can also be represented as 32 bits because the CPU generates 32-bit addresses, and this address generated by TLB can be of three parts, can consist of three parts: cache tag, set offset, and block offset. Cache tag, the number of bits in the tag only we need to find, that has been asked in the question. Okay, so we don't know what is the value of the cache tag. We have to find the set offset and the block offset from the given data. So in the given question, set offset is nothing but we need to first of all find the number of sets which can be formed from the given data, and from that we can find the set offset. So number of sets is nothing but they have told that the TLB consists of 128 page table entries, and it's a 4-way set associative cache. Okay. So how many sets can be formed? It totally consists of 128 entries, and one set will consist of 4 page table entries. So total sets which can be formed is 128 divided by 4, which is 32. 32 is nothing but 2 power 5. Okay, set offset is nothing but 5 here. The next one is block offset. Block offset is nothing but they have given page size. They have given the page size as 4K. So page size is equivalent to block size in the translation leukocyte buffer. So 4K is nothing but 1K is equal to 2 power 10, that is 1024. So 4K is 4 into 2 power 10, which is nothing but 2 power 12. So the number of the bits in the block offset is 12 bits. Okay. So now we have found the set offset as 5 and we have found the block offset as 12. And we have also found that the total size is 32 bits. Okay, totally it is 32 and we have found 5 and 12 which is 17. So 32 minus 17 would be the number of bits in the tag, cache tag. So number of bits in the cache tag would be 15 bits. So the answer to this question would be 15. This was frequently asked in many of the examinations and it's a very important question. So that is all for this video. If you like the video, do give a like, and if you have any doubts, you can comment in the comments box below this video. Thank you.